Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipson. Today's guest is Steve Dainton. He's the CEO at ITTF, the International Table Tennis Federation. He has been with ITTF for 14 years, but took on the role as CEO in 2017 and has shown incredible results since. He speaks fluent Chinese, which comes in handy within a sport dominated by Chinese players. In this episode, we speak about ITTF's growth strategy, the 50th anniversary of Ping Pong Diplomacy, the ITTF Foundation and their work with CSR, what ITTF thinks about hosting events in China and Qatar, and much more. Steve Dainton, welcome to Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you here. And you are the CEO at the ITTF, the International Table Tennis Federation. So can you tell us a little bit what this role includes?
Yeah, I've been CEO now for a little bit over 4 years. The job is really largely to manage the entire ITTF group. The ITTF group for us at the moment includes three key parts. That's, of course, the ITTF, the governing body of table tennis, the International Federation with our 227 member associations. It also includes World Table Tennis. World Table Tennis is an entity that we started and opened officially in 2019, but which originally started its work last year in 2021, and that's managing the commercial business of the ITTF and hopefully of table tennis. And also the ITTF Foundation, which is managing all of our corporate social responsibility things that we do in together with the sport of table tennis.
That's really interesting, and I want to talk to you more about all of this. If we talk about first table tennis as a whole, everyone knows that the Asian market and the Asia Pacific market is very, very strong and maybe not as strong in, for example, Europe. So how do you see this aspect, and is there a growth strategy maybe to grow in Europe?
Yeah, we've, for the last 20, 30 years, we could see the shift of the commercial business moving, let's say, from west to east in that way. And we've also seen the dominance of China in our sport for quite some time now. I mean, it's not just recently, it's been there for probably 20, 30 years. Only the country where you're from has sometimes given them a little bit of a challenge. The Swedish team has occasionally come out and challenged them at the highest level, beating them, especially on the men's side in some of the championships. So, yeah, of course, sports in general, we can see the Asian market more recently becoming a larger and more influential and a bigger part where not just table tennis, but many sports are starting to operate and be successful in. On the other hand, our sport in general are traditionally strong in Europe, but now, as you mentioned, weakening in terms of the commercial part. But I guess from the ITTF and now with our new entities like World Table Tennis, we're really trying to think as global as we can. And therefore, it is really important that we do put some emphasis back on developing some of these different markets and not just putting all of our eggs into the Asian market. And that means then we have to have, and we are having now, a new strategy on how to bring back some of the business into Europe, which is a good starting point because we were a traditionally popular sport in that market. But not only that, and also looking at Africa and the Americas and to some degree Oceania, because the good thing about our sport is that it's, as you said, it's everyone knows table tennis. Everyone's probably played table tennis. Table tennis is more or less everywhere. It's one of the most popular sports around the world. But developing the markets, those different markets, has not been a big success so far, and we need to change that and do that.
I understand. And to your point with the Swedish players as well, we had Jan-Ove Wallner a couple of years ago, and I would say that he brought up the interest for table tennis locally here. And then it went down afterwards. We had more players during that time. And then now recently we had the young talent Truls who came to the final. Do you think that key players in a country, that when someone performs very well, that can help bring up the interest in that specific country maybe?
Well, I think that's very clear. I mean, we just talked about why, especially in our sport, the Asian market become probably more important. And let's say the China market, that's because they're winning all the major titles. So, I mean, I think there is absolutely a correlation between success on the sporting field and the market and the commercial business around that. So I think that's not really rocket science or anything like that. That's pretty clear. So we are actually, and we've been thinking for some time, but now when we kind of redevelop ourselves with these three entities, we're really thinking on how do you manage an international federation that has 227 members who we try our absolute best to treat equally, but realistically at the same time, they're not all equal in terms of market and market size. So that's why sometimes, you have to think of it strategically from a marketing and commercial point of view. And that's where World Table Tennis can hopefully come into play, whereas the ITTF has to maybe think a little bit more from a universality and a fairness point of view, which don't always interact well. But back to the point, if we can have, and therefore if we can have, some players from different markets doing well, we will be able to see an improvement in the commerciality in those markets as well. So Truls is a good example and a good hope for us in the Sweden Europe market, so to speak. We also have a Brazilian player, Hugo Calderano. It's a very interesting case study for us. He's, I think he's number 3 in the world at the moment. I mean, that's the highest ever a Brazilian has been on the world rankings at the ITTF. And we can already start to see that our opportunities in that market also increase. So we need some strategy that can help give our Chinese friends some more challenge on the table. That's very clear.
Yeah. Looking at the numbers for the last 5 years, I read that your income has increased with 130% since 2017, which is much more than it was the 5 years prior. And then we need to consider also that at least 2 of these years have been during the pandemic. So what's your secret?
Well, I mean, when I started in 17 and we started to grow our team, first of all, we took a couple of key, I guess, buzzwords. They are at the end of the day, but I think they're really strategic as well. And that was, we want to have a strong growth strategy. That was absolute key and forefront on everything that we do. So when we were thinking about any kind of changes, any kind of future, we were thinking, how does this support our strategy to grow as a federation? And I mean, probably we'd been a little bit stagnant for some years prior to that as well. So when you're stagnant for some years prior and you make some changes, you can quickly, solve some of the problems. But, and I think another interesting point was that whilst it shouldn't be rocket science, it should be quite, it should almost be, a normal thing that you do. But we had our first strategic plan in 2018. And I think we were probably one of the last federations to come with a strategic plan. So whilst we were proud to present a strategic plan, in general, I'm not sure that we should be so proud that we're the last ones. But when you're putting those professional, normal business operations into effect, it's not really rocket science at the end of the day that you can quickly fix some of the defects that you've had from the past and change that. So I'd like to say that there was a big secret behind it, but I just think that it's more or less operating in a professional manner with a strategy towards growth.
I see. And circling back to what you mentioned in the beginning, that there are the 3 entities. I'm very curious about the ITTF Foundation and the CSR effort. So if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the ITTF Foundation was the first entity that we created after in the last period, and that was officially launched in 2018. And it wasn't necessarily anything new that we were doing at the ITTF. It was just restructuring it and then recommunicating it and making it more clear that that was an area or the areas that they work in were something that we considered to be a bit more serious and so forth. And the point was there that previously we had what they say is like we were doing sport, development of sport, so the development of table tennis, and then using sport for development, which is quite different when you take your sport and try to use it to help in society. We had that mixed all together, and we thought it's quite important that we split those two and separate them out on the first front. But we also thought that can help us to be even more can promote even more the great work that we were doing in using table tennis as a tool to try and do good things for the society. And I think that's more or less how it was born, and it's grown. It's also grown since then, and it was part of our growth strategy. We wanted them to be able to find new ways to bring revenue so they can do more projects, et cetera, et cetera. And they've grown from started off with 2 persons, and I think they have 7 or 8 persons already. And the number of projects that they are doing has increased dramatically, even if it was complicated in the last couple of years with COVID. But they have a whole bunch of activities now that they're doing, which are pretty cool. We have, just to mention a couple of the simple ones, but the good ones that they do is World Table Tennis Day, which is on April the 6th every year. And that's a day that we try to, ask everyone around the world to create and make an activity for table tennis and to promote the sport in the country or the city or the region where they're from. And that's something that really helps table tennis get a little bit more promotion and exposure around the world. But also other things that are, let's say, more specific on a benefit to the society. They created a couple of years ago something called the World Championships of Table Tennis for those with Parkinson's disease. And that's something very interesting because our sport is supposedly, at least anecdotally, helping people that have cognitive disorders and diseases that affect the neurology, especially the part of the brain. And they believe that table tennis, due to the movement, the hand-eye coordination, etc., can actually help improve the brain functions, etc. And it's been a very successful tournament in the last couple of years, and something that is growing. But there's something to show that table tennis can help society in different things. In this case, it's in terms of health and the benefits it has around health. And I could go on. The list of activities that you're trying to do is a lot, and it's really cool. Like even last year we had Ping Pong Diplomacy. Our sport has played a role in at some levels to help with ping pong diplomacy. Of course, 50 years ago, the Americans and the Chinese started their relations through a table tennis event in Japan, where the 2 players made friends. And from there, relations could be built between the 2 countries. So, the foundation is doing some work in this area as well. It's a very interesting thing that the foundation is doing, and it's a lot of fun because you can be quite creative on how the sport can help our society.
Definitely, and the Parkinson initiative there is just amazing, and I would love to see in the future some scientific data on how that some numbers on it, but it sounds really promising. Yeah, and you mentioned also Ping Pong Diplomacy, which had their 50 years anniversary last year, as you talked about there. Something that I find interesting now is that obviously you have a lot of business in China. We have spoken about that. And also you host some events in Doha, in Qatar. And these are 2 countries that recently have been criticized as host countries, both for Olympics and the World Cup in football later this year. So what is the decision-making process from your end when having events in these countries?
Well, I guess if you take the last couple of years, specifically where it's been incredibly complicated and difficult to find event organizers, we're very we feel very proud and lucky that these two countries have stepped up for the ITTF and for table tennis. I mean, we are more on the IOC side there, where we don't want to be so political or involved in the political or the geopolitical discussions that are happening. We want to have table tennis events, and we want our players to be able to perform. We want it to be mainly and mostly or all about the sport in that regard. So I think if you take the last couple of years where, yes, China helped us do a restart series in 2020 at probably the most complicated time of COVID-19. And last year also, when we were really struggling to find hosts, especially that I think all sports are having trouble with finances these last couple of years, where we needed support and help, that I think we felt more on the side of being proud and lucky that there were countries, regardless of how other countries view them, ready to help table tennis, because we're here to develop the sport of table tennis, where we want to work on the sport of table tennis. And if anyone is interested to help us to develop that, we will welcome it with open arms.
Has there been any pushback from any national federations? Because, I mean, there are stories with the tennis players in China that gone missing. There are now, during the Olympics, the athletes coming home that they didn't want to talk about their experience while in China because they were afraid of not being able to come home, and they share it now. So have some of the, for example, European countries, have they been afraid of coming to your events in China or something, for example?
Well, we have only had the one experience, because we didn't have any events in China in 2021, but we had the one experience in Restart 2020, probably, where actually, if you look back, we were the first sport and the only sport to have something on that scale in China in 2020. So in some case, I guess we were a bit of a testing ground to that. And I mean, of course, we had concerns about quarantine. We had concerns about health and safety at the time, but the amount of effort that we saw China putting into ensuring the health and safety of the players, the comfort of the players, to put a high-level table tennis event on at that time, I think at the end of the day, majority of people were very, very positive that they did that at that moment of time. I think now it would be different if we're talking about how a lot of the world is opened up again, and quarantines and the treatment of COVID in a lot of parts of the world is changing, but hasn't really changed, and China keeps its zero COVID policy in place. I think we will have more complications if we want to have events in China and still have those difficult quarantine measures and so forth in place. That would be different, but not really, I wouldn't say complaints or anything in that regards from our guys.
I see. Looking forward, what can we look forward to in terms of ITTF?
Yeah, I mean, first, I think we've been working on this World Table Tennis Event Series for some years before COVID, and then we're trying to launch it during COVID. Has been a complication. We've talked about, a series that we have called the Grand Smashers. I don't want to necessarily compare it with tennis, but it's something, similar like the Grand Slams. And we've been talking about that for some time. And the main reason for that is because we want to have more higher level events in our sport that the players consider as, let's say, the pinnacles each year, not just one every 2 years or the Olympic Games every 4 years, but we have 4 or 5 events per year, which players, media, and everyone consider as the pinnacle of our sport each year. And we have our first Grand Smash next month from the 7th to the 20th of March here in Singapore. And although we wished we had some last year, we were not able to manage it with the COVID situation, but the first event next month. And for me, a couple of key points there is that it's a $2 million prize money event. That's the highest ever. I mean, it's double any other table tennis event in terms of prize money that's ever been hosted. Other simple things, but like we're also covering all the hospitality of all the players. So and the prize money where it's going right down to the qualifying. So I think for the majority of players, there's a fair bit of excitement around this, but also for us to be able to prove that with World Table Tennis and a different business model, that we are able to actually massively increase the conditions that we offer to the players and actually reach a much higher level of event by changing our business model. And it really is achievable. It's not now that some of us here at work, that have been supporting and promoting World Table Tennis have said is possible for a long time. Now we actually do it. So that's exciting. We're pretty close to announce one also to be held in the middle of the year in Europe, which will be exciting. And yeah, normally if China was less closed with their quarantine restrictions, we would be able to have one or two in China as well. Now we're hoping, of course, for 2023 for that. So I think that's the real exciting part, I think, in terms of the events for table tennis. I think otherwise, if you're talking ITTF in general, I think it's an interesting moment of time because we do have a new leadership. We have a new president, which is bringing some fresh energy and some fresh blood to our federation, and some great ideas, in terms of. And I hope one day you will talk to her because I think I don't want to speak on her behalf, but in terms of sustainability, in terms of innovations, and in terms of some restructures that she would like to bring to the sport, which are very interesting and can also be positive, we'd probably say let's wait and see until we reveal all of those things for now. But I think that at least that fresh energy and the positive spirit that comes with the new presidency is also very exciting for us.
Definitely a lot of interesting and exciting things coming up. And definitely I will speak with Petra and see if we can have something for the future here. Before I move into the second segment, I'm working in the hockey space usually, and it's a lot of technology that goes into the sticks and the skates and how can we maximize performance. The table tennis racket hasn't really revolutionized in terms of shape the last couple of years until this year when I saw Truls with a hexagon-shaped racket. So what's going on there?
Yeah, I'm not the expert on the equipment, so I'm not sure I can give you the full technical detail. I've heard on the grapevine that the hexagon racket gives a greater surface area to be able to hit the ball, so it decreases the margin of error. So I've heard that's a study that SIGA, who developed this equipment, have realized. Obviously, he took it to the final at the World Table Tennis Championship, so it's hard to argue that it's not good. The performance on the table is ultimately what matters at the end of the day. So it's an interesting move in terms of shape of the racket, absolutely. In terms of other development, yes, I think there's been some pushes in recent years that the blades move from 80% wood to more carbon type materials, which has never passed during our meetings, and probably I think in terms of equipment we want to see a little bit more experimentation, and we want to see a little bit more, what's the word I want to use here, but we want to try and test a lot more to see which changes would actually bring benefit to the sport, especially in terms of visibility to the media and fans coming to watch it, and so forth, and perhaps even making it slightly easier to play as a beginner, because once you get the really best rackets with rubbers and you try to play it, it's quite a technical sport and at that level.
This episode is sponsored by InSport Education, the online business school for sport. As you already know, they offer a wide range of courses, and coming up now is Sustainability in Sport. This course is for anyone involved in the broad ecosystem of sport. Right now, InSport Education offers early bird pricing, which is 50% off the course price. And it gets better. With the code SportsManagementPodcast10, you get an additional 10% off the already discounted price. The course starts March 28th, so don't wait. Click the link in the description below and sign up today. Speaking a little bit about yourself and your career in sports, can you tell us a little bit about how it started and your journey up until today?
Yeah, I guess to try and keep a long story short, I've had a very natural progression through the table tennis ranks. I mean, I'm from Australia. It's not a traditionally strong table tennis nation, but I played when I was young. My father got me involved in the sport, and I had a huge passion as a young kid growing up for table tennis, and got into coaching at a very young age, and also helping Table Tennis Australia, when I was in my late teens, early 20s. And then from there, I guess never really expecting as an Australian person involved in table tennis to make a career out of the sport, but somehow opportunities just kept popping up, and very interesting opportunities, and I always found them very interesting. And I guess the second part to that is that I studied international business at school, which included, let's say, a marketing degree or a business degree in marketing, and also an arts degree in international relations. And I also learned to speak Chinese, which in our sport is probably an advantage to have. So I think a few of these things led me to different positions at the ITTF, starting in the office in Shanghai in 2005, getting involved in the commercial side quite quickly, helping with marketing, trying to bring revenues to the ITTF through the different agencies we had at the time, and then finally to CEO.
That's quite a journey. And how difficult was it to learn Chinese?
Well, Chinese is, it's obviously one of the harder languages to learn. But I think like anything, if you have a passion and want to do it, it's very possible. I mean, I would have spent 3 or 4 years every day trying to learn new characters and learn new words and studying. I mean, I did it first 3 years at university. Also went to Beijing and had a exchange program with my university in Beijing. So that obviously helped a lot with the base. And then I lived in China for 6 years, and I married a Chinese lady. So I guess all of those things help at the end of the day.
And obviously that's very beneficial in your current role as CEO of ITTF, since we have spoken about it before. It's a lot of business in China as well.
Yeah, and I think that's very interesting. I think for a long time at the ITTF, or at least in the modern history of ITTF, the last 20 years, hasn't always been good relations between ITTF and China. It's almost been competitive in that regard. They often thought that the ITTF were changing things to restrict their chances or their performance or so forth, whether that was rule changes or equipment changes or something like that. And we've always, and of course, I think it's normal for the International Federation to want to have a greater spread of medals and so forth. On the other hand, I think in the last few years, and whether that's because I speak Chinese or not, I think quite differently. I think it's better to have them on the journey with us and to hopefully help us to be able to adjust or change some of the areas that the sport needs changes. I mean, at the end of the day, speaking very frankly, the amount of resources that Chinese table tennis has compared to the rest of the world is probably more. And I don't think it makes sense to be competing with them. I think it makes sense to work together to try and see how we can both the ITTF and together with Chinese table tennis improve in many of those areas that we need to improve on for our sport, whether that's commercial, whether that's technical, whether that's development of equipment like we just talked about. I think with a good partnership, we can actually make more positive things than we can by being in competition.
How would you define your leadership style?
Probably if you ask the other people, it would be a different answer. But I think it's I'm trying my best to be more strategic in terms of the way that I'm leading, and not to be too operational. And of course, sometimes you do get into operational matters. It's in a management role that is quite natural. So therefore, in terms of that, I really want the team that we build around us to be able to be very decisive in their in their roles, and not for me to be, let's say, an autocratic or, like a strong leader in that sense. I very much prefer that it's a consultative and strategic type of leadership.
What would be your best advice for young people with ambitions to work in sports?
Well, I think it's passion it really goes a long way. And I mean, I don't think that I would have been able to get to the position that I had without, strong passion and desire to want to see something good for the sport. I think it's also always to be true to the core value. And for me, the core value is that I want everything that we do to eventually and hopefully be in the best interest of, in this case, it's table tennis. It can be other sports in other cases. So I think that's important. And really, I would say, what I'm learning is when I first started, I was always one of the youngest in the federation. When I started, mid-20s at that time was quite a young person in the ITTF. And I always thought, I'm the young one. Now I'm not so much the young one. I have a lot of young people around me. But what I can see and what I think is important for the younger generation is that you still need to work really hard, because it's really hard work goes a really long way, and to have some patience, because it's not that we can change and manage everything overnight. Like young people these days, it's probably because of technology changes. They want things to move fast and to be very quick, but still we need some patience in, let's say, moving up the chain.
Yeah, that's good advice. When listening to you here, you talk with a lot of passion. We talked about the increase in income you have helped generate to the business of ITTF and everything. It seems like it's a sunshine story, but have there been any bumps on the road in your career? And if so, how did you overcome them?
You wouldn't have to dig very deep in the media to see some of the bumps that we've had over the last couple of years. I mean, let's put COVID aside, because I think everyone's been through the COVID bump.
Yeah.
I think the biggest bump has been, the change that we've wanted to make with world table tennis is quite, some would say, I call it evolutionary. Some want to say it's revolutionary, and therefore it's too big of a change for the table tennis world to deal with. So I think if you dig into the media, we've had some complications there where some of our member federations have felt that we move too fast and we want to change too fast, and they're not ready for it, and so forth. And there was quite a strong push against that late 2020, early last year. And I'd say that's probably been, in my career, one of the tougher hurdles to overcome, and trying to get them on track and to see that we are actually doing this because the sport needs it, because we believe that it's going to help grow the sport, and that we don't want to fall behind in terms of how other sports are moving forward in the world of sports business. So I don't know if you'd call it a battle, but this challenge was for sure the most complicated thing that we've had in the last 24 months. But now, like I said earlier, that once we start to bring things to the floor, you really start to see those critics being more at ease, because they start to believe that it's not just all talk, and that you actually can achieve it. And I think after we get through this last phase of COVID, and then the next couple of years, really ensure that whole new event structure is up and running, and everyone sees it and feels it. Although I always expect in an international federation world, there's always some politics and there's always some question marks, but it will help a lot once we get that out and on the field. So yeah, that was an interesting hurdle this last couple of years, but I think we're close to coming to the end of that now.
I'm glad to hear, and change is never easy, and it takes some time to get used to as well.
Absolutely.
Before we sign off here, if you could choose the next guest on this podcast, who would you recommend?
Well, of course, I have to say Petra Serling.
Yeah.
If it's someone from outside of table tennis, well, I think at the moment the big debate in the world of sports is related to the biannual FIFA World Cup. So if you could find someone at the higher level to discuss with, an Arsene Wenger or even the president there, that could be interesting to listen to how they are approaching and why they are so passionately believing that that's a good thing for FIFA.
Yeah, definitely. That's an interesting one. I will keep that in mind. Is there something that I haven't asked you that you want to bring up?
No, I think it's been a good session, and I just hope that your listeners will look out for our World Table Tennis events coming up, especially the Singapore one. Have a look at that, and would love to hear some feedback, especially on from some of the commercial guys out there that would maybe be interested in working together in the future.
Definitely. And if the listeners want to find out more, is it ITTF.com?
ITTF.com. We also have worldtabletennis.com, which is for that new events platform.
And social media as well, maybe?
WTT, if you go to Facebook, at the top of the ITTF.com, you'll find all the handles, actually.
Perfect. Steve Dainton, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Sports Management Podcast.
Really appreciate the invite. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.